Welcome to Georgia House Rules, the podcast that takes you behind the headlines and onto the front lines of the Georgia House Democratic Caucus. Get ready as Representative Karen Lupton breaks down legislative battles and policy fights in the State House and beyond. Let's hear what's happening this week on Georgia House Rules.
Hello and welcome again to Georgia House Rules with Representative Karen Lupton. I'm your host, and today I have with me two really fabulous reps that I am really proud to call colleagues. We want to talk a little bit about, of course, the big elephant in the room is the tort reform vote that happened in the Georgia House last week, but we have many miles to go before we sleep here in the Georgia General Assembly. So my good friends, Representative Omari Crawford and Representative Inga Willis, are here to talk us through it today. Thank you, both of you, for being with me.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having us.
This may sound strange to some people, but we call each other classes when we all come in at the same time. So Inga and Omari and I are in part of the same class. We were elected the same year and had our first moments in the General Assembly together. So we've got a pretty tight bond, I think.
I would agree.
Yes. Yes.
It's like soldiers in the foxhole, so to speak.
You're one of our faves. You're one of my faves.
Absolutely one of mine.
Well, the feeling is mutual. We should retitle this episode, the Mutual Admiration Society of the Georgia General Assembly. But besides that, Inga, can you tell us a little bit about your experience of Thursday, which was when the House took up tort reform, SB 68, and the battle that happened there on the floor?
Wow. Yes, I can. And I think that's a great way to frame the question. We all have different experiences, right? Even in moments that we share. So through my lens, it was a very hectic day. We knew that it was coming. We've been preparing for this moment for the entirety of session. And to be quite candid and honest, even before there had been talks about it, and to the public, that means not just convening with one another, discussing it with one another, conversations amongst lobbyists, conversations amongst victims, being called out to the ropes by victims, by lobbyists about this. So there was this unending ping pong of back and forth between the seat. When is the vote coming? We had heard that it was coming on that particular day. I did not think it was going to come quite that early. So all of a sudden I'm sitting there playing my position and helping my teammates prepare to be great for the day in the way that I do. And I look up and it's just on the screen and I ask Rep. Crawford, I'm like, Omari, is it now? He's like, yes, it's now. He slid his speech under my laptop that he was going to give as I was on my computer working with Chairwoman Miller. And it was the best of times and the worst of times. I was the proudest of my seatmate, Representative Crawford, for what he was able to bring to the conversation in that moment. I could not be prouder of our chairwoman, Tanya Miller, for possibly one of the best well speeches I've heard since I've been in the legislature.
Amen.
In terms of being informed and reaffirming the position that we took as a caucus. And that was to stand on our value proposition of protecting people over profits. What it felt like in the moment was surreal, fast, happening. What's the vote going to be? I'm ready to push my button. I've been ready to push my button since before session started because I knew what I was going to do. So I want to make sure my button wasn't sticking. Is it working? Is everything okay? Because it's a no for me.
Hard no.
But it was surreal. It was also heart-wrenching and heartbreaking to see that in the very moment that we were one vote away from denying this governor something that he wanted that was so harmful to our people and that is a caucus, to reflect as a party that we had an opportunity to say no collectively, and even had some Republican support, to be quite honest with you, in the vote. It was
Yes, we did.
astonishing, but I was gutted. I still am. It's not over, but I did what I committed to do, and I stood with my caucus, and I would do it again. And I stood for the people of Georgia, and that's what I was elected here to do. And I stood for victims, and I stood for children, seniors, people who don't have the means to or even know how to obtain an attorney, and still believe, even now, that we should not insert hurdles into the obstacle course of obtaining justice. We should remove them. And so that's how I felt.
Yes, we are in agreement about that. I think, well, all three of us on this podcast did cast no votes for this legislation, and Omari, in fact, you spoke against it, as Inga as Inga mentioned. You spoke against it in the well. What was that like for you?
Thursday is a blur, mainly because, as Representative Willis said, it had been something that had been hanging over the Capitol since the first day of session. And when the governor gave his state address discussing something that he was going to prioritize and even require a special session should the legislation not pass. So when it finally came to the floor on Thursday, I got to the Capitol very early on Thursday morning to go to our caucus meeting and to also speak with a few individual members of our caucus to kind of explain to them my position with the bill, why I think the bill is dangerous, and why the bill would make it more difficult for people catastrophically injured to receive justice. And that are those challenges when you juxtapose that to how it will allow insurance companies to have more money. I mean, to me, I thought that it was a pretty simple answer of how we should look at this legislation. Got to the House floor, and I saw and realized it was very tense. You had a lot of people that were for and against Senate Bill 68 outside of the ropes. So it was a very crowded day at the Capitol. And my seatmate and I always exchanged pleasantries, and we did on that day, as always. But it was just a lot of tension in the air. She was busy in her computer, and I remember the leadership in our caucus confirmed, because it had been questioned whether or not I was going to speak to it. I didn't know. Well, it was confirmed probably about 30 minutes before the bill was actually called. I got the confirmation, okay, you will speak to the bill. And so, as my seatmate, Rep. Willis, said, I start typing some things in my phone, getting some notes prepared. Okay, what am I going to say? And I don't know that I'd ever seen the gallery in our chamber with that many people before.
Yeah, there were a lot of witnesses here for this vote.
And there were so many people counting on the caucus. And so my position at the time, and I want to give special recognition to a few representatives, Al Williams, Sam Park, and without a doubt, Stacey Evans and Tanya Miller, right?
Absolutely.
But the work that they put into trying to stop this bill from getting through the subcommittee that was created and trying to offer amendments, and their attentiveness and being down at the Capitol for hours and days with the weight of so many victims and advocates on their shoulders. And they did a phenomenal job. And each of them also spoke against the bill, as well as Shay Roberts. But I definitely want to acknowledge the four that stayed with this for a long time. It made remarkable speeches. I I want to thank the 4 caucus members, Representative Al Williams, Sam Park, Stacey Evans, and Representative Chairwoman Tanya Miller for the work that they put into trying to stop this bill in the subcommittee that was created to hear it, and how they spoke up for victims and advocates. They did Herculean effort in trying to stop this bill, which was a governor prioritized bill. And just to
And came
back
pretty
up,
close to stopping it. I mean,
did an incredible job.
One vote.
And to back up what Representative Willis said, Stacey Evans and Tanya, this is not to, I will put my own speech to the side. Stacey Evans and Tanya Miller, my God. I mean,
Oof.
Tanya Miller
it was
had
impressive.
one of the most phenomenal speeches I've ever heard in my life. Stacey Evans, a phenomenal speech. And, that was, in my opinion, that was our Super Bowl.
Ooh.
That was the biggest stage. I don't care what side you were on. The entire state felt like it was not only watching, but almost sitting in the gallery. And we came up one vote short. So that hurts. That is something that I have been wrestling with over the last few days, because it was so much energy put into this one piece of legislation. And I'm hurt for not only what the vote looked like, but what it does, right? Like, this is something that, again, is going to make victims of terrible violent acts, it's going to make it more challenging for them in court. And that's, I hate that.
That's not what we're here to do.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Certainly not. It was a very, very intense day. For me, I've been a hard no on tort reform since the beginning, and I'm not all that involved with caucus. I'm not tight with caucus leadership, and neither am I an attorney. So basically, I had a couple of texts. Nobody had ever really called me out to the ropes. I put it out there very loudly, very clearly. Hey, I'm a hard no on this. Don't bother with me.
Yeah.
But there were, one of the interesting and difficult things that we have as Democrats is very little leverage with which to say, hey, we need you to stick with us as a caucus, or else question mark? It's very, very difficult.
Big question marks.
Yeah.
Big question marks.
I think everyone who spoke against the bill had different reasons and reasons of why the bill was not a good bill, right? In my effort, it was to look at the efficiency and how this bill would interfere with the efficiency of our independent judiciary branch. This is a bill that is going to create more backlogs in our courts, and that's something that should be important to everyone, even if you don't really understand the weeds and the nuances of what it will do to everyday Georgians, which I think is extremely important as well. It's the most important. But for people who are like so-called love the government and love that we have 3 branches of government and stick their chests out about the efficiency of the checks and balance system that we have in this country and in this state, for me, that was what I was trying to encourage people to really understand, that you can't, on the one hand, be a person that acknowledges the Constitution and acknowledges 3 branches of government and love that we have 3 branches of government, but then support a bill that is handcuffing our judicial branch. We are telling you what you can and cannot do in your courtroom based upon this false narrative that we have created that says you are having too many frivolous lawsuits. You're having too many nuclear verdicts. Neither is true, right?
No,
and so I think that was more so of my position. coupled with the terrible things that this bill will do for everyday Georgians.
Yeah. And it does seem like separation of powers has been both on the federal level and and the state
Seems like a
level.
theme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Seems like
And I want to thank both of you, Inga and Omari, for your bravery, your leadership, for your steadfastness in this fight. I've been telling folks, because I've had some folks ask me, like, oh my God, what now? I've been encouraging folks to get in touch with the governor's office directly, because it's not going to, okay, what I try to make clear is it's not going to stop Governor Kemp from signing tort reform. He's going to sign it, and he's going to, be very proud about it. However, we know that Governor Kemp wants more. He wants higher office. So what I'm asking people to do is, if you don't like this, contact his office and say, we will remember this the next time you ask us for your vote. We're not giving you money. We're not giving you our support. I feel like that's the leverage that we as voters can throw out there to remind the governor that there's a whole lot of other people in the state who do not agree with him. Inga, have you had people ask you for advice?
Oh, so many. I had several speaking engagements this weekend. One was with a literary club that is a Black literary club here in Atlanta that's about 110 years old. The gifts were banned books on the table.
Oh, nice.
These women, these backbones of community, these trailblazing Black women, whom I deeply admire, whom have poured into me all of my life, and whom I have the honor and privilege of sitting with at times. We're in this setting this weekend, just as an example, and they are watching. They came up. They said, "What? So what are we going to do? Who were the 3 votes? What are you all doing about it? What happened?" So it let me know that there is more than I've seen before, a keen awareness and focus on state politics right now from people who typically focus on national or
Yes.
even closer local, right? So I represent the city of Atlanta, and Atlanta politics is festive. So there's plenty to watch if you just, want to see what's going on with City Hall and the mayor and this and that. It's a thing. But to have people ask me specifically about tort reform, amongst other things, like their Social Security, and it is revealing to me the connectivity between national politics and the pandemonium that is causing, right? Uncertainty,
Yes.
whether the EPA is standing, Department of Education, etc. Social Security, will they receive it? Which is just heartbreaking
Yeah.
to hear from our seniors anyway, which make up a large part of my district. But yes, they're asking me what to do, but they're also asking Democrats to do their jobs. And so
Yes.
first and foremost for them is that, we shouldn't, just like with my position on tort reform, we should not be placing more of a burden on victims, right? We as the
Absolutely.
Democratic Party should not be placing more of a burden on our voters who did their job in getting us here. And so that's where I sit in this moment, is it should not be up to me to give a list, a litany, a bevy of options to someone who did their job and exercised their right to put us in these seats, to now have a reactive duty based upon Democrats not doing their jobs. And that is the way it's reading in the public. And that is the way it's reading to the people. And that is the way that it feels. And it's not just what it's done to the victim. It's what it's done to this caucus and what it's doing to this party. And so there's gravity in this moment. And if we fail to seize it, shame on us. Shame on us. I did not come here to play with you people on behalf of my people. I did not come here to bend the
You
knee.
did not.
I did not come here to cower, and I did not come here to dance for governor's aspirations. I came here for different reasons. And so I think, Karen, I'm always, with you. And that was one of the most chaotic days and darkest days of my service in this House of Representatives. It was one of the darkest and most disappointing days. It reflected not only what a chaos machine of propaganda can do. This was a manufactured crisis that was not new. There was no a crisis in the judicial system of where the jurors can't make up their minds. And if that was the case, then we would be revamping the entire jury system. That's not what we're doing. This was very concise and very specific to a specific type of case where we were forced to believe or led to believe or being swayed to believe that people who sacrifice to serve on juries can't do their jobs when it comes to certain things. And we gave the insurance companies a layup. And the people who I've spoken with, Rep. Lupton, want to know when we're getting our act together, want to know why we didn't do what we said we were going to do. They want to know why we didn't protect the people. They want to know where their deals cut. They have a myriad of questions. And it's now in the, hands of the Senate and in the hands of our greater leadership. But I don't want to tiptoe around the fact that people are outraged, and so am I.
One of the reasons that I love you so much, Inga, is that you're out there and you're in it to win it all the time. You don't pull any punches, and you're just so committed. That's one of the reasons that I love serving with you. And I know now Omari gets to sit next to you and see some of the fireworks that I don't get to see. I'd love to be on your side of the chamber.
I annoy her every morning
and afternoon.
Right.
Okay.
Goofer.
So, well, you're consistent. We can say that.
Right. And, in terms of consistent, I mean, I think it's a perfect segue. We are called into leadership roles for the people. And I think it's simple, for the people. For the first 5 years of my legal career, I represented victims of premises liability and negligent security cases. And so I could describe case after case after case of innocent people who were harmed because of negligence, omissions, and just downright apathetic slumlords and their reluctance to really upkeep their property because they didn't care. They don't care.
Correct.
It's about money. I talked about in the well a young lady who was shot at and how she will forever be impaired because she was shot at by gang members that were inside of a parking lot, and how this particular property had multiple shootings. But I can also talk about a young man who went inside of his new bedroom. Parents had just moved into an apartment and they saw it as moving on up because they came from really bad conditions before this next move. This young man, for the first time, has his own bedroom. He is jumping on top of his bed up and down. And as soon as the family goes outside to start moving things, back into the apartment, rival gangs are shooting at each other. Stray bullet hits him in the head. He dies. So these are the type of families that I used to represent.
Wow.
And so when you, again, make it, as my seatmate just said, you make it more difficult for them at what cost? For insurance companies that are already going to make billions of dollars, and they will continue to make billions of dollars, right?
Yep.
We're going to make it more difficult for the person who has to bury their son.
How dare we?
Or the woman who can't even hold her arm above her head anymore, simply because they were existing. They weren't doing anything wrong. Our job is to protect them. So to Inga's point, this was a very difficult day for me because, again, I've worked in that field, right? I continue to work in that field. And so we are creating more hurdles for people. And as legislators, as if you are trying to be a public servant, your job should be to make it easier for
Yeah.
people.
Just like voting.
For
So you can,
justice, for our
so
laws
you
to
can,
hold people
Just like
accountable.
so
voting.
you can better protect them, right? That's why we have town halls. We are bringing the government to you. How can we serve you? How can we, so to vote for Senate Bill 68, I think is the opposite of what we are supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be helping. Nothing that in this bill that was drafted helps anyone. Not a single living, breathing soul. It helps companies, right?
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
come into politics to help companies.
And I think one of the most gutting parts, there were many, if I'm being honest, was to hear, our speaker and others say, now let's see what the insurance companies do. They told us this would reduce insurance rates. Now let's study it now and see what happens. No, we should have studied it before, because one of the most upsetting things is that it has been proven that tort reform doesn't lower insurance rates. So when you have, I've got more people in my district than businesses. Although
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
businesses, I've got more people, and I heard from businesses. I also heard from people who told me what they wanted to do. I vote on their behalf, right? They didn't get to
Right.
vote on this. We did. And that is a sacred act. And so that's just where I am. How dare we stumble in the road when it comes to what's best for the people? Rape victims,
Yeah.
survivors, seniors in uninhabitable conditions, children. People act as if poverty is a choice
And a crime.
and a crime versus a
Yeah.
circumstance. And the value proposition that I signed up for in this party protects them. That's why I'm here. And so I'm disgusted still. And I probably will be for a while.
Yeah. And that's okay.
Yeah.
You know,
Go ahead, Omari.
no, I mean, when you are in the minority party, right? A lot of legislation comes at you, legislation that you do not support, right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes I find myself looking at two different options. One option is to go ballistic, yell, scream, flip tables at every bill that comes through committee that I don't like, which is a lot, or every bill that comes to the House floor that I don't like, which unfortunately is a lot.
Is also a lot. Yes.
Or you say, I'm just going to say no to this one, not flip a table, and save my strength for a bigger battle. Because while I may dislike a lot of them, they are not all the same. I think what hurts about this one is that, in my opinion, this one will have, in comparison to some of the others that we've seen that maybe we don't like, this one was the one where I think as a caucus, we did the latter. We saved our strength and we were ready, or so I thought, to attack this thing together. And when the numbers came out and the numbers, were not what we wanted, it hurts, right? Especially
Yeah.
when you're that close.
And when you've
Especially when you're that
invested so much in it.
One vote.
Yeah.
So many of our leadership and you guys invested so much in making sure that other legislators and people understood just what was at stake. And to see that not turn out the way we want
Yeah.
is
And,
what
Yeah.
that sound is not
and
going to
we
translate
communicated,
well.
Rep. Lupton, we communicated to external stakeholders that, Democratic vote should not be taken for granted either. This was a well-oiled well-funded propaganda machine, a
Yeah,
manufactured bias.
campaign to
And
get
so
this
to battle
into.
that with common sense and intellect, it's a knife to a gunfight. People are staying.
Yes, it feels like that.
But this moment was, and kudos to our chairwoman who led a valiant effort in this
Yeah.
regard. And
A plus.
Representative Stacey Evans, they were like Cagney and Lacey, Laverne, they were like, in it, subcommittee,
Yeah.
slicing and dicing, bringing the victims forward, finding the common
Yeah.
denominator. Hey, that's how we did get the carve out for sex trafficking victim, is by calling that to the
Correct.
forefront. Because that's something
Yeah.
that matters to the first lady of this state. So how would you make them suffer? So that hypocrisy hurt me even more. That
Yeah.
you can go to court if you're a sex trafficking survivor, and yes, your life is forever altered.
Yeah.
But
And I also want to acknowledge our leader, because she also had to make a choice. Her career is in insurance.
Yeah. I don't know if people know that, but our leader, Carolyn Hughley, works for, as she said many times, State Farm Insurance.
Right. And she helped, to create what we had, was just a caucus position, right? She led that charge as well. So, she sacrificed, a lot of people sacrifice a lot. I think, my seatmate knows that I have so many great sports analogies. But it's you get beaten the game that you work so hard for, and it's a close game, and you lose because of mistakes and errors, and that's what this feels like. And so,
Yeah, an unforced error.
right, and so now we have to pick yourself up and be prepared for the next big fight, because it will happen. We
Yeah.
have approximately 6 days left, 2 weeks, and there are other bills that I am ideologically opposed to that may find their way to the House floor. And
Right.
so again, it is, be upset about this, and you have a right to be upset about this. What do you do to prepare for the next play? And I think that's what we have to look at ourselves and say. That doesn't mean in my sports analogy, that you don't call the errors out in
Yeah.
film study after the game.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
Okay. But then you also have to be prepared for that next game. And so we have some bills that may be coming to the House floor, like RFRA, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act bill.
I can't
Senate
believe
bill,
they're bringing that thing back. I mean, come on
Senate Bill
now.
36. It is in committee right now. We don't know if it will make it through committee into the House floor in time. But for those who might be watching, one, the bill is a bill that's going to be used to discriminate. And that's all I need to say. It will be a license to
Yeah.
discriminate. That, I think in its most simplest form, that's what the bill is, right?
Yeah.
And religious or religion will be used as a way to discriminate. And we have so many cases around our country to show what discrimination looks like through RFRA legislation.
Yes.
So it's tons. It's tons of it out there, right? The next thing is, will it get to the House floor this session? But for those who
Yeah.
may be watching who don't understand this, even if it does not get to the House floor this session, it is still eligible to come to the House floor this biennium,
Yes.
which means it may come next year,
yes,
right? So
Yeah, they're just
that's
teeing it up this session.
right. It may not come by April 4th. That does not mean that it won't come next year in 2026.
we've seen
In
bills
2026.
that we've heard were coming that haven't come. So there's oftentimes, just for our listenership and viewership, there's there are oftentimes we'll get worked up about something that's coming. We'll put efforts into it. It may or may not come. Hell, last year they tried to drop the Clarence Thomas statue on Capitol grounds.
I remember that.
So, it did not come, but we were prepared for it to come. So if the theme is overreach, right?
Right, government overreach.
Yeah, then, it's you never know when something is going to come to the floor. You prepare for battle as best you can. But when you're in a caucus, you make a commitment to play a team sport. Mm-hmm. And when you play team sports, look at my seatmate like, okay, go ahead with your sports analogy, okay? But when you make a commitment to play a team sport, when the coach says run this play, we run it. Sure, correct. I could probably hit my own three-pointer just because I'm nice like that. But if you ask me to do XYZ, I'm committed to do XYZ. That's my commitment. When you don't commit to play a team sport, we lose as a team. And I think that's where we are. So just want to be clear about that. And that, for me, is unacceptable behavior. It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. And how dare we act as if it's not? It is unacceptable. You did not. Yes, I voted for Inga Willis. My one vote did not get me here. The rest of the votes did. Mm-hmm. And so I'm disgusted. This has been a tough session. We are a tough team, but it's hard to play a team sport when people are not playing a team sport, and it's a team sport. Shame on you.
It is very. It's a real irony of this job that we have to stand for the 60,000 that elected us. But I remember speaking. I was at a bipartisan event, and a woman who generally politically lives across the aisle was asking me, well, don't you guys just get to vote your conscience on everything? Like, you're in there. Don't you just get to vote your conscience? And I laughed and I laughed and I laughed because there is that point where you folks in your district may disagree with folks in my district about something, but there is that team play aspect. One of the things that people have asked me, because I was in local government, nonpartisan government before I got to here, they say, oh, how is it different? I said, you have a lot more teams that you're on when you're in here. You have not only your party team, we're the Democratic caucus, but each of us have different county delegations that we're in, different municipal delegations that we're in. We have these circles that don't always line up in these nice little pretty Venn diagrams or concentric circles that can pull us different ways. So sometimes, no, it's not just about what Karen Lupton wants to vote. Sometimes it is, especially when we take a caucus position, about what is the coach telling us to do right now.
And a lot of times, it is about being a team. And then I also think under the Gold Dome, there are often times where legislation may not be good. I'm sorry, it may not be perfect, but it's good, right? Mm-hmm. And that's happened before, where constituents they ask you, well, why couldn't we get this in this bill? Listen, it was amended in its best shape or form. Mm-hmm. It was not going to look this particular way or that way. I remember in our first session, we all came in together. There was a bill that expanded tenant rights.
Yes.
House Bill 404. And a Republican, Casey Carpenter, was the primary sponsor of the bill.
Yes, I remember that.
The bill in its original form expanded rights, and through amendments, it created even more rights. So we got better. Mm-hmm. But when you had people who wanted it to be so extreme, it's like, listen, it's better. It gives more rights than we previously had. It addresses a problem, and it is a good piece of legislation. Mm-hmm. It's not perfect. Similarly, this particular session, we had another bill that dealt with education, right? Mm-hmm. House Bill 268.
Yes.
Off the top of my head, with
came through my committee in education,
right? With and you know this all extremely well, right? I don't want to mansplain it. I've been on,
We got a lot of other people out there who don't know what HB 268 is, so please.
but the education and safety bill and the well-being of the students bill that originated in your committee, you guys made it better than its original form. And then when it
Certainly
got to
tried
the
to.
House floor, it was better than it had previously been, right? And so when people say, can you do certain things? Yes, we can try to make legislation better. It may not be perfect, right? And then there's legislation where it's just in my mind, it's just bad legislation
It's just
for
bad,
people in
bad,
my
bad.
district, right? So perhaps maybe in a different district, they might say, this is wonderful. Well, in my district, it's terrible, right? And I'm going to speak out against it and why it's bad for my district. And I think, to what Rep. Willis just said, yeah, like, and what you're saying as well, sometimes it's about your district that's specific, but then sometimes we can look and say, no, generally, this is probably bad for almost everybody in the state, right?
Yeah. And we're going to try to hang together
Right.
as caucus to compound our power. I know it has been, and the day this vote, specifically the tort vote, I was hoping we'd get to other bills. Well, I thought maybe we'd get to other bills, but tort is just too juicy. It's so juicy.
That was a big one.
That it was so big. But I do want to say, and you two having served exactly the same amount of time, that we've all been together the exact same amount of time, what happened within the Democratic caucus wasn't possible even 365 days ago, as far as having a strong point of leadership. I feel, did we get quite the result that we wanted? No, but I wasn't sure that even last year, this time, we could have pulled together even the coalition that we had. What is it, the coalition of the coalition of the willing, or whatever? I've been watching too much Parks and Rec in my spare time, but I want to thank the both of you for just being the incredible public servants that you are.
Same for you.
Lending your intelligence and passion to governance. That we, in my opinion, we need a lot more people like that who know that they aren't here for themselves, who know that they're here for a higher calling for other people mostly. And I appreciate the fact that you guys carry that in your hearts all the time. I see it in your actions and I see it in your service. So thanks for taking the time to talk
Thank you.
with me today.
Why wouldn't we?
Well,
You're one of our favorites, and we appreciate you. I want to take an opportunity just to shout you out. It's not easy to find space in this place to bring our gifts to the forefront. And so I commend you for utilizing yours in this space. It's something that many of us struggle with. How do we make our individual impact? And each of our contributions matter. Some seen and some unseen, but all important. And so just want to publicly thank you for, utilizing your station, sacrificing your privilege willingly. And, we thank you for that. And I want people to know that there are often times when, it's necessary to do. And that is, and we have to do that for one another. And for the people. So just thank you, Karen, for, stepping up and utilizing your voice and your privilege in instances to ensure that what is best for the people moves forward, because I fundamentally and idealistically believe that is who we still are and who we should aspire to be. And that is my hope.
Yes, Karen, thank you for using your voice, which is kind of like a double entendre because you are a singer.
And she is.
And I am, or I was.
Is that a dead joke?
No.
Was that a dead joke?
No, it was pretty solid.
It was
pretty solid.
Yeah, I take that a couple steps above a dad joke.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe an uncle, but
a fun uncle, funkle.
A funkle.
Yeah,
That's right.
Solid.
I think that's the perfect level of joke that was.
Yeah, well, no, seriously, thank you for allowing us to just speak on this platform. To my seatmate, she said it correctly. One, and I've said to see your face, say it behind your back. Representative Lumpkin, you are one of my favorite people in the entire Capitol.
Thanks.
Thank you for speaking out right? Like you spoke out against what was the 267 bill that
Yeah.
came to the House floor, right?
Yeah. The numbers are a blur, but yeah.
Right. And so you use your voice as well, and that's what we have to do. We have to show that even though we are not in the majority party, and even though we don't have the numbers to just straight stop every bill, it is important that we fight. It is important that
Absolutely.
our voices are heard. It is important that our voices are heard for those who are not sitting in our seats. So advocacy is extremely important. It will
Yep.
always be important. And as we claim, because it will happen, that we will reach the majority party at some point, it's
Yep.
bound to happen. It's inevitable, right? We will continue to be advocates for the people in our districts. And that's important, right?
Yep. That's the whole thing of representative government. Representative.
Right. I see what you did there.
Boom.
Now that was a dad joke. Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I will see you guys here tomorrow. We're recording this on a Monday, and we don't have our committees today.
We might need to
or
come
sessions,
back here
but
because there's so much more to talk about. But we'll be back, people. We'll be back.
to be
part
continued. Dot. See, this is why I love you guys. Okay, well, we will see you all on the next episode of Georgia House Rules. Find us wherever you find us. You'll hear it in the outro. And thank you again to Representative Inga Willis and Representative Omari Crawford
Anytime.
for being just awesome people.
Tighten up,
See you all
tighten
next
up,
time.
Democrats. See y'all next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Georgia House Rules with your host, Rep. Karen Lupton. We hope you've enjoyed our discussions today. Please keep the conversation going by finding us online at www.gahouserules.com or email us at gahouserules@gmail.com. Until our next episode, please follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at GA House Rules.